Welcome to the show.
And welcome back to another episode of the AstrosFuture podcast here on the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Price, also known as AstrosFuture. You can find my work at astrosfuture.com and find me on X at AstrosFuture.
I'm your co-host, Kenny Van Doren.
So today, Kenny, we've got a few games in the books, but we're going to do our 2026 minor league preview here. Rosters are out. We'll start looking at some guys to pay attention to this year. I'm super pumped about the lower levels. We'll get to that a little bit later as we work our way down. Sugarland's played 3 games at this point. By the time we'll get done recording, they'll have their 4th in. But Corpus Christi, Asheville, and Fayetteville all get started this week. So we're just going to kind of break down the rosters, look at a few players to watch. Unfortunately, we won't get to everybody. And as I was making my list, there was already guys I was like, gosh, I want to talk about this guy or this guy. But we'll see what we can get to, and then we'll throw anything else if we have any other things that stand out about the roster. We'll start with Sugarland. It's a little bit of a difficult roster, I think, just based on the way that you had a guy like Bryce Matthews make the major league roster opening day. That takes a talent out of Sugarland, which is obviously the goal. But they're left with not a whole lot of homegrown talent. So on the position player side, the one that I put down to watch was Zach Cole. And as we got news just a couple of days ago, he got hit in the right foot. I don't remember exactly what toe broke, but he broke a toe in his right foot. And he's going to be out indefinitely. So a big bummer there because we know what potential Zach Cole has. McTaggart did say he'll be back this year. So he'll be back at some point. But outside of that, the position player rosters are looking a little rough. But who's a position player for you to watch, Kenny?
The Astros did say it was the 5th toe on his right foot. So I guess that's just your pinky toe, it's the smallest one on the outside of your foot. Yeah, so this is where it gets a little tough, Jimmy. You took the one that I think anyone would have wanted to talk about was to say it's just the guy. You look at it, and this isn't like a slight on the AAA roster, and that's just kind of how it's constructed right now. And by the end of the summer, there will definitely be more true prospects, guys that are haven't had major league experience, guys that haven't been around in the minor leagues for a second stint with a new team here. You got like Jack Spiggers, Riley Unroe, Jack Winkler. Like a lot of these guys have had experience probably in other systems and have, been knocking at the door at the major leagues, been in big league camp. It's just a little bit tough to choose from. Some guys that have been in the big leagues, CJ Alexander, Kevin Biggio, Taylor Trammell, who's been kicking around still with the Astros. So I just have to go with the other guy that's kind of in that real prospect camp. I usually think that 26 is that cutoff, but Colin Price, you go back to that 2022 draft class, Jimmy, and I think it was a pretty fun one. Just from the start to the end, there was a lot of guys that stuck around in the system for a handful of years. Colin Price has been in big league camp the last 2 years now. He's been around deep in a big league camp at times. And the reason I'll point him out, and it hasn't been the best offensive start for him this year. And I mean, it hasn't always been the best offensive going for him, but he's stuck at catcher, even though he's 6 foot, I think he's 6'7". Yeah, 6'4", 225 pounds. I mean, he's on the larger side of those catchers, but 0 for 9 so far through those first 2 games he played with 4 Ks. I mean, not the best start offensively, nothing to nitpick there. But he's the only catcher, and when you look at the 40-man roster, there's only 2 backstops there, Jimmy. So that's where my mind kind of goes of, yes, Cesar Salazar is still in the system. Carlos Perez, who's a veteran, is also in AAA. Can Colin Price separate himself at all? It's kind of a wait and see, but that's the only other real prospect I can pick from on the position player side.
Yeah, when you're looking at his numbers, he kind of under the radar had a decent season in Sugarland last year. 18 homers, OPS over 750, had some walks, but definitely interested to see where they go from there, like you talk about with the catcher position. But I would say at least on the pitching side, there's some very intriguing prospect relievers, and the one that I wanted to talk about, we can look at the starters. We know Spencer Arrighetti's there, and he's been a top prospect and made his debut, and he'll be up eventually. And then you got a couple other guys like Colton Gordon, who are probably going to make major league starts at some point this year. But the one that I'm really looking forward to watching is Hudson Leach, and signed him as an undrafted free agent in 2024. You look at his minor league numbers, and like the first year he had a 3.26 ERA, not too bad. The second year 5.54. Made it up to AAA. ERA was a little high. Strikeouts were really good. The Astros sent him over to the Arizona Fall League, and he strikes out 13 and 6 2/3 innings. And then he gets a little run this spring, which was really cool to see for someone who was just undrafted a couple years ago. And he tosses 3 scoreless innings, strikes out 3. Running the fastball up to 99. Just really good stuff. He's had 1 outing so far in Sugarland. He struck out the side. He did walk 2, but he struck out the side as well. He's only 24 years old. That's one that I'm very interested to see, that I think getting that invite to big league camp so early as well. I think bodes well for his future. But if he performs, we know the way that the Astros are going to end up needing pitching, just like all clubs do. Very interested to see how he performs. If he does well, I think he's going to get a chance.
Yeah, added a lot of velocity. I think up 4 miles per hour last year. And it's a guy who's had shoulder injuries. He's had 2 elbow surgeries back in high school and he had a third one in college. So, the medical history's there. And that just kind of goes with the lack of success because you're not really, have many opportunities to stay healthy and stay on the field. But at that same time, he can touch 99 on his fastballs. RPMs on his curveball can get up to 3,000 and sit in the lower 80s. I mean, the numbers are just jumping off the charts for Hudson Leach. And I think it's a very exciting reliever just to continue to track on the Astros side, especially when you look at the start of the season, Jimmy, the kind of shuffling of the roster already, the shuffling of the bullpen with kind of burning through arms. And, that comes with just, kind of some lapses early on in the opening series. But he pitches solely out of the stretch. I'm very intrigued to kind of see where that goes because it's just one of those UDFA guys that just stands out for the Astros.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think there's always the need, like you mentioned. We've already seen Bolton get selected and Roa go down, and that's just as the bullpen gets used, we're going to continue to see that. So Leach gets a chance, but I know you got another prospect, relief prospect that you're interested in seeing in AAA this year. Who is that?
Yeah, I think he was the guy that I chose when we did our draft for non-roster invitees. He was the one that I wanted to talk about, and that's Alimber Santa. No longer a starter. That's in the rearview mirror for him, but still 22 years old. And it's one of those things. Again, he's only made 1 appearance this year, and he had 2 walks and gave up a hit in that outing. But it's one of those things you're just not really going to nitpick anything to start the year. But when we talk about guys that could be pushing up and, biting at that opportunity to be on the 40-man roster, I think Alimber Santa is in that camp. We talked about Brian Abreu, who's a guy that's kind of nearing the end of his, control gears for the Astros, who can be one of those guys that steps into that role where, there's another one of these low bonus kind of pitchers that the Astros got out of the Dominican Republic that can excel at the major league level. I'm intrigued to see how that kind of looks in a full season of AAA, even if he does play the full year in Sugar Land. I don't know. He appeared in 15 games last year. It wasn't the best. The ERA really climbed after a great season in Corpus Christi, but a fastball still there, 60 grade. I think that's the reliever to have circled throughout the summer is Alimber Santa.
Yeah, and Corpus Christi, he was dominant last year. I think what really stood out to me was that he didn't allow many hits. And I think that's, I think you can improve your command, you can improve your control, but your pitches being unhittable, hard to square up is extremely important. And that's what he did last year. So yeah, limiting the walks is obviously going to be crucial for him. I know that kind of caught up to him in AAA, but still a really young pitching prospect. But we'll jump down to Double, unless you had anything else on Sugarland at this point. We'll jump down to Double-A. And then I think this is where it really starts to get interesting. So I'll go first with my position player. It's kind of a layup one, I guess, too. Actually, there's a few of them. This one's a little bit easier. But I'll go with Joseph Sullivan. He kind of burst on the scene last year with a big spring training. Everyone had high hopes for him. He started out the year in Asheville and was really, really good. Walked a ton, hit homers, stole a lot of bases. Finished out the season in Double-A. The numbers weren't as good there. But, I think when you look a little bit deeper, his swinging strike percentage was the same level of Connor Griffin's, who's top prospect in baseball, or maybe number 1 or 2, depending on what list you're looking at. So it's not like he's swinging and missing. It's strictly he's got to be a little bit more aggressive. So I'm interested to see if maybe they get him to be a little bit more aggressive, where he's swinging at more pitches in the zone to try to make a little bit more contact. But he's got the big time power, the big time speed, starting back in Double-A. Super excited to see what he can do this year.
A guy that had some swing adjustments too in Corpus Christi, went to the Arizona Fall League. This is something you can put it all together. And there weren't many true prospects like we talked about, maybe in the Astros system, top 30, however far you want to look down the list that were invited to big league camp, but he was one of them. And the guy that I want to go with is in a similar spot in Lucas Spence. And Jimmy, the reason I was thinking that, I was between a couple guys, like you said, on this Hooks roster. There's some other guys that kind of, pique my interest. Jerron Williams, fully healthy. What can he do, especially with that speed that he brings there? Will Bush is someone that we keep talking about, who brings power from the left side and can be very nimble at first base too, while playing catcher as well. But with the injury to Zach Cole, my mind, along with, not really knowing how long he'll be out when they say indefinitely for the Astros, still working through that process. I want to look at another lefty outfielder in Lucas Spence, a guy that was also invited to big league camp. I think that, the numbers weren't the best when he got to Corpus Christi. They weren't, you still, hovering around that 775 OPS, but, they weren't like, a screamer like they were at the start of the year when he was in Fayetteville, but he definitely improved from his time in Asheville. It was only 30 games. So, how are you going to see him when he goes in through June and then July, once the roster starts to change a lot more in July as guys get shuffled up the system with opportunities at the top for a left-handed hitting outfielder like Sullivan and Spence. I think this is a pivotal month for both of them, just kind of make their mark as Zach Cole comes back from an injury.
Yeah, and seeing him go from undrafted to single A, high A, double A, all in 1 year is pretty impressive already. And he held his own at each level. Like I said, the numbers maybe went down a little bit in double A, but still pretty good for first full season. So yeah, I'm super pumped for him. He kind of provides some of the same things Sullivan does, maybe not as much power, but has some speed, good defender in the outfield. So yeah, that's a good pair of lefty outfielders there. So I'll jump over to the pitching side. And this is where, once again, I think things get interesting. There's a lot that I think we could look at. A lot of names on the list that I was kind of scanning. And the one that kind of caught my eye was James Hicks. 13th round selection a few years ago, had a really good year, like his first full season. And the last year it was tough. It was tough in double A for him. Numbers weren't great, pretty high ERA. The Astros went ahead and sent him to the Arizona Fall League so he gets some extra innings, and he just absolutely dominated there. 14 innings, struck out 19, only allowed 6 hits, no runs. So 0 ERA in 14 innings in the Arizona Fall League. Pitching against some of the best competition in minor league baseball. We know some of the top prospects are there. Really excited to see what he does this year. I think he figured some things out. I know the ball that he used there, which is the same ball that AAA and major leagues use, helped him out a lot. But he's got the stuff. He's got a really good sinker. He's in that low to maybe low mid 90s. Throws a lot of different pitches. But yeah, I'm super excited to see what he can do now that he's healthy. And just the way the Astros farm system is right now, I could see him maybe putting together some good numbers and getting into AAA pretty quick.
You look at other guys just in double A. I think overall, the last couple of years, we've always liked the double A rotation. Jackson Nezu's in this one as well. Alex Santos is still kicking around. There's always, maybe a week or two where you're like, oh man, I think he's got it there. Nick Swanson, who's still kicking around from the 2021 draft, a guy that I've liked for a while. I just wanted to see kind of break through and just give him an opportunity at AAA. Alonzo Treadwell, who wasn't on the roster graphic to start, he's going to be delayed a little bit. He was another guy who finished the year very strong in 2025. But I thought I would go with another guy that, has been on the Astros Future podcast. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask you at the end how many of these guys we've spoken to, either you've interviewed just for a story or on the podcast. But we're going to go with Bryce Mayer. It seems like everything is kind of working well for him. Of course, the changeup is the one thing that needs the most improvement in that arsenal. But coming off Astros minor league pitcher of the year, now it's just a matter of how much deeper can he go in the year. Got put on the development list, hit an innings max. Can he get over 100 this season with ease? That PR, I guess the personal best for him in innings pitched is 87 2/3. Now it's just a matter of, can you get him over that mark? I mean, how can the strikeouts continue to play while he's in Corpus Christi? And guy that wasn't invited to big league camp, but I sure think he's in that group of guys that the Astros are looking at for the next 2 years to join that rotation or be that next AJ Bluebaugh that comes up and can really eat innings for you as he tries to carve out a role.
Yeah, I mean, he had a phenomenal season last year. That's why he was the Astros minor league pitcher of the year, and you nailed it. I mean, he talked about Lucas Spence making it up 3 levels. He did the same thing, dominant in Fayetteville, Asheville, gets up to double A, hits those innings limits. He gave up a little bit of runs, but we knew, like, I think we were talking in maybe, I don't know if it was July or August, and we were talking about Bryce Mayer being the Astros minor league pitcher of the year. We were kind of taking our choices on it, and sure enough, he ends up getting it. So yeah, he adds to a very intriguing set of arms. You mentioned it. Trey Dombrowski's there. Ramsey David, who we saw throw in 99 or almost to 100. Brett Gillis, a guy who's been injured but has had some success. Jackson Nezu, really good numbers. And then I feel bad not even mentioning Walker Yannick, who's the Astros first round pick just 2 years ago in 24, making it to double A, had some decent numbers in high A last year, stole 30 bases, and it's nice to see the athletic ability there. Had a really good season throwing base runners out. I think he's got to be a little bit more contact there, maybe a little bit more power, but him taking that next level up, I think he's also, I don't remember the exact town he's from, but I know it's very close to Corpus Christi. Is it Portland? Portland, does that sound right?
Yeah, I'll look it up real quick because that always comes up of like, him going to games, watching Astros prospects.
So I know they're gonna love having them in Double A. But yeah, I think even looking at where we were last year with the Double A roster, I feel a lot better about where it's at right now. And then you look down, you got Will Bush down there, you got Luis Baez,
Mhm.
who we know he struggled last year, but we know what Baez did the year prior, and we know what he's capable of. So hopefully he's got his condition right. Did you look up Yannick?
Yep, it is Portland. And
Okay.
there's just like so many fun names when you kind of just go through this as well. Like Pascanel Ferreras, who's been kind of in a similar camp as Tommy Sacco, who's just been around
Yep.
in the system for a while. He was Mr. Irrelevant. Guy who's been on the podcast too, and is fun to talk to. He's a good defender. Can he put it together offensively? John Garcia, who's had great strides in certain categories as a hitter as well. He got bit by the injury bug at one point. I mean, how is that going to turn around? And Luis Baez, just another name that was at the top of the system at one point and really just kind of lagged the last 2 years. And Tyler Whitaker, one former top pick as well. I mean, it's an exciting team. I think there's a lot of upside to it. Joey Mancini's another pitcher that I've liked from certain stretches. I think he could be a bulk reliever, if they can move him up in that category. So I think all around it's going to be kind of a fun 2 months, 3 months with this team before things start to change in the system.
Yeah, and I feel like that excitement continues to rise as we go down the level. So we'll go down to High A, Asheville, and once again, I think it's a super intriguing roster. We'll talk about the ones we're looking at. There was probably a layup there. I left that one for you, and I went with a little bit of a different one. I went with Caden Powell as my position player to watch. The Astros drafted him in the 6th round of the 24 draft out of a junior college, paid him a really nice bonus. Last year, he started the season really well, actually. I think he had an OPS of nearly 100, was hitting like 265 before he went out injury right at the end of May. But really good power, has some pop. I think he finished the season with 10 homers, 32 stolen bases in 78 games. So, a little more than half a season. Solid numbers. And really, if you look like prior to his injury, the numbers are really good. But starting in Double A this year, it's going to be his age 22 season. The Astros, it looked like they had him maybe listed as an outfielder. I think he played outfield, maybe some in spring training. So maybe there's a transition there. He was drafted as a shortstop, third baseman. But I think there's a lot to like with the bat and the athletic ability he has.
Nothing beats what the Astros kind of list players as sometimes. I remember it was a big question for Zach DeZenzo when he came on the podcast for the first time. It's like, why are you listed as an outfielder when you're playing third base and first base right now? And he started playing outfield a couple of years later, and I think that was just a by mistake that he was even listed that. Even if you look at the Sugarland lineup, Jimmy, it says Shea Whitcomb is listed as a left fielder. So it's not. There just needs to be a utility logo against some of these guys' names too. But yeah, I'll go with the layup now. Ethan Fry. It's just been kind of a exciting offseason in my opinion because I just want to see him hit again. His time in Fayetteville, he hit 330 in 26 games, posted a 904 OPS. He had 3 homers. He did have 25 strikeouts in 26 games, but he also had 20 walks and 9 stolen bases. It feels like a guy who was well polished. And what do you expect? I mean, he's a 22-year-old outfielder. He turned 22 2 weeks ago, coming over from LSU. Of course, it's going to be a baseball factory to a place that's knows winning as well. Where he's won 2 College World Series with the Tigers. 60 great power. I think all around, you should be keeping your eyes on Ethan Fry for pretty quick promotions too. I think my ceiling for Ethan Fry this year is to finish the year as the top prospect in the system. And I think there's going to be top 100 prospect buzz too, if everything works out offensively for him. If he can get up to, make or break league in the Texas League and, treat it with ease and doesn't have many hiccups offensively, I think he's looking at a guy that can move up the system quickly. And we've seen Dana Brown and his regime do that with college bats. And Ethan Fry is just another example of that.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while since the Astros drafted a guy that came into the system and like immediately started dominating. Hit, like you said, hit 330, and I'm trying to go find it. I had a point in here. Okay, hold on, I found it here. So what really stuck out to me was some of the underlying stats. So he had a 6.2% swinging strike rate, which is really low. For comparison, JJ Weatherholt, who I think made the major league roster for St. Louis. He had a 6.7 last year. So you're looking at a little bit lower swinging strike percentage than one of the top prospects in baseball. His contact percentage, Ethan Fry's was 83.4. Weatherholt was 83.8. Those are small stats that we're looking at, but I think it just shows that he had a very good offensive season. He wasn't swinging and missing a ton. He was making a lot of contact. He's got big time power, 6'6". Yeah, I'm super, super pumped for what he's going to be able to do in Asheville. And I already booked some tickets to go to Asheville in June, and I have a feeling he's not going to be there.
Yeah, he might be closer to you. I don't want to like put that on him and make people excited that want to go down, and especially for LSU fans. I know there's going to be a lot of overlap and want to go see him play as soon as possible. But I think in a perfect world, he's in Corpus Christi at some point in June.
Definitely. So we'll move on to the pitching, and then we'll recap the roster here in a second. But the pitcher that I'm looking forward to seeing, and this is going to be my dark horse candidate for I don't even know if you call it dark horse actually, but minor league pitcher of the year in the Astros system, Cole Hertzler. They drafted him in the fifth round back in 2024. And he's just kind of had some struggles staying healthy. But when he's been on the mound, he's pitched really well. He struck out 28 and 21 professional innings. Not a lot of innings for 2 seasons, but we got to see him in the spring breakout game. He struck out, I think it was 5 over 3 scoreless, mid-90s fastball, really good arsenal of pitches. And he just, I don't know, something about him kind of like reminds me of like the Bryce Mayers, the Ethan Peckos that we've seen the last few years, where maybe he starts out in high A, has some really good numbers, makes it up to double A, and then Astros minor league pitch of the year, and then if we put a bet on it, I don't know, maybe I win the bet. We'll find out. But I'm super pumped for what he's going to be able to do this year. Now that he's healthy, we've seen him have some success already. Just about health, and he's healthy now.
Man, Jimmy, I was going to say that. I was going to say that he was going to be my Astros minor league pitcher of the year. And if anyone listened to the Bryce Mayer interview, Bryce said, like, we asked Bryce, who's the pitcher to look out for that could follow in the footsteps of a guy like you or Ethan Pecco, who kind of made this really quick rise. And he was right to it, Cole Hertzler. He said that was the guy to keep an eye on. Fun fact about Hertzler, Jimmy, is that he was teammates with Trey Savage in high school. I didn't know that until I looked it up before the show. But his best offering is that low 80s changeup, and I think that's good to have. We keep talking about some guys that don't have the sharpest changeups in the system, and that's a 60 grade pitch for him. He's getting a lot of buzz outside of even your rankings too, Jimmy. If people are starting to see it, even though he hasn't had many innings behind his or under his belt, that he will be kind of moving up the system as well. 97 can touch on the fastball. He's a high arm slot. I'm just really intrigued to see how that kind of looks in a full season. We'll definitely, I think we'll see him in Corpus Christi at some point, but in terms of professional innings that are actually recorded, he only has 21. So I don't think that's just going to be one that you want to push weight, super fast. But the Astros might have seen some things this spring, and we talk about spring breakout and just in the backfields that maybe he looks, 100%, but I wouldn't be surprised either if we maybe hit an innings limit with him. And sorry if you're going to hear me typing here, but I wanted to look up his numbers in college. Just on Baseball Reference, the most that he ever pitched. I mean, that's not a bad number. Last year at Liberty, 84 and a third. So maybe in a similar camp as Bryce Mayer, where maybe we could see it kind of capped out around 90 at the end of the year.
Yeah, and if he gets 90 innings, I mean, and hopefully they're good innings, that's a successful season with him. He's in his age 23 season, but obviously no need to rush. So yeah, if he can get above that 84 limit, I mean, I think we'd obviously be happy with that. But Kenny, I know there's a lot of intriguing arms on there, and we'll get to all of them in a second. But what's your pick? Who's your pitcher to watch in Asheville?
I don't even know. Like, I feel like polarizing is a bad way to say this, but I've talked to some people and they're not as high on him. And I think there's just too many people nitpicking him, and maybe we'll see a little bit more of what it looks like this year at high A. But I like Parker Smith. I think, some of the offerings are a little bit more middle of the road. He pitched in 68 and a third innings last year. We talked about him coming back from that injury and having some back problems, and only got around 60 innings with Fayetteville last year, 3.32 ERA, whip under 1.4, 55 Ks in those 59 and 2/3 innings. So I think, the numbers for some evaluators are like, oh, it's not the best lines from Fayetteville. But I think a lot of his pitchers are, above average. I think that's a fine thing to have. He's a low 90s sinker. He can hit, like the mid upper levels on his fastball around 96. So I think, he's a good ground ball pitcher. And I think that's not a bad thing to have. If he can really get deeper into these starts, especially when he's in Nashville and kind of consistently hit 5-6 innings. I'm not sure many pitchers will be going, too deep, especially in those Asheville starts. I'm kind of liking it. I'm kind of liking what I'm seeing from Parker Smith. I think the org is a little bit higher than some evaluators, but I want to see what it looks like in a full year in Nashville. And of course, he's in his age 23 season as well.
And I have to look it up just to be sure, but he's a third or fourth round pick 2 years ago.
Yeah, fourth rounder in 2024. Of
Yeah,
course, people that know his
out of
name, he
Rice.
is a Rice guy. Uh, Bel-Air.
Yep. Yeah, and he had I think I don't remember what month it was. It may have been August, but he had a month last year where he took off, and I think he had an ERA under 2, pitched like 29 innings that month. I think struck out like 30 or something like that. Barely walked any. Really good control. So yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do at that level. Astros not a great place to pitch. Just given it's pretty hitter friendly, but we'll see how he can take the challenge. But outside of even a Parker Smith and a Cole Hertzler, there's a lot of intriguing arms there. I was looking at you got Nolan DeVos, who's made his way back now after the injuries. And I think if you go back to, I'm guessing it was 2023 was probably his last full season. He was an arm that like you were thinking was going to take that next step, maybe be a top 20 in the system or something like that. Really good strikeout numbers and pitched well even in Asheville, and then just has battled injuries the last couple of years. But he's healthy. He's back in Asheville, and then they got a ton of what I would call young international arms. When you look at an Anthony Cruz, Aline Pena, Luis Rodriguez, the guy they got in the Corey Julks trade from the White Sox, Uriel Santos. There's a lot of arms there that I think had some decent numbers at times in Fayetteville, and they're all in that 21, 22 years old range. So interested to see how those guys perform as well.
Yeah, another guy that it feels like it's kind of make or break this year, just depending on how much longer he'd be in the system. Is Jose Guedes, who's just anytime I see his name, I just go and look at his page because I remember being pretty excited about him when he was coming up through the DSL. And I mean, the numbers just weren't always great when he got stateside. It was just and this is like one of those things where you just don't want to analyze just numbers in rookie ball. But he made 7 appearances when he was first signed, Jimmy, and he had a .69 ERA in 26 innings pitched, 36 strikeouts to 8 walks. And it was like, wow, if he can do that again, repeat that in stateside, it would look great. But, he got bit by an injury bug as well in that 2023 season. This will be his 3rd year in Asheville. And I'm interested to see if there's anything still there where he can break through, because the strikeout numbers have been impressive in the past, but it's just a matter of this is your 3rd time going through, and it's going to be that age 25 season.
Yeah, I think it was the 24 season maybe that he started really well in Asheville, and it kind of almost caught me off guard. Like, not guys are pitching great there, and he was having really good numbers. Then I think he ended up getting hurt. But yeah, he's healthy now, so we'll see how that shakes out. Offensively, they got some 2025 draftees there along with Ethan Fry, but Kyle Walker, Justin Thomas, Chase Call, and if I'm saying it right, is it Daudet? Is that how you say it? Zach Daudet?
So, yes.
Yeah. And under the radar, I think he was a 10th round pick, and I think he signed for like $10,000. Very, very low. But him having a 139 weighted runs created plus last year, more walks than strikeouts in single A. He didn't have a homer, so I don't know if how much power he's going to have. But in 30 games, he had 25 walks to 20 strikeouts at 294. Interested to see how he performs there. But yeah, it's they got five or six from last year's draft class on the offensive side there, and then just a few other guys that I think. We'll see what they end up doing. Alejandro Nunez repeating there. I think he led the team in like batting average and hits last year. He's kind of does everything okay, but nothing phenomenal necessarily. But good prospect, plays all over the field. Anyone else that kind of stands out to you on their roster?
Yeah, you see Alberto Hernandez and Cesar Hernandez. Of course, you're going to be gravitated towards those guys. They've been guys that have been considered near the top of the international side when they were signed by the Astros, and nothing has really kind of come their way offensively. I really like Max Holley as a defender. I think he is electric and a lot of fun to watch. If the offense can play, if he can boost his value a lot in more of a hitter-friendly park, I'm all for it. I think he's a lot of fun to watch. I think he could be one of those guys that sticks around in the system for a while and see if he breaks through like the Tommy Sackos or even Pascal Ferreras, just because they are very good defenders and kind of can play all around the diamond.
Yeah, and like just talking about these rosters as we're going now is getting me excited. We're recording on a Monday evening, and Asheville and Corpus Christi get started on Thursday. Fayetteville's on Friday. Actually, tonight, Fayetteville and Asheville are having a Battle of the Ville. Unfortunately, not televised. I got a quick story for you. Won't take long, but I messaged Andrew Chapman, the media guy, the announcer for the Woodpeckers. Hopefully, he doesn't mind me saying this, but he's bat boy tonight because he lost. He got last in their fantasy football league. I was like, that's a good punishment. The Battle of the Ville, you're going to be the bat boy. So hopefully, he doesn't mind me saying that. But I thought that was pretty cool. Go ahead.
I hope he's in full uniform as well. I've never seen him not in a polo, so I think that would be a lot of fun.
I'll have to message him for a picture. Yeah. All right, so we'll bump down to Fayetteville once again. I think a very, very intriguing roster. and probably a level of talent at that level, or a amount of talent at that level that we haven't seen in quite some time. So, um, we talk about a layup, or you want to call it a free throw. I mean, this is like a Victor Wembanyama dunk when I'm talking about the one to watch here. And really, the one you're probably going to take is the same. But I went with Xavier Nans, Astros first round pick last year. Gave him a bonus over $4 million. A big left-handed power. I think he's going to end up playing shortstop. I know there's talks that maybe he goes to third if he outgrows it, which they said the same thing about Carlos Correa. So we'll see if he could stick there. But big time power. Like I said, the Astros haven't spent that much money or gone that high for a high schooler since I believe I think it was 2015, high school position player, when they took Kyle Tucker. So to get a talent like that in the system that they haven't had in a long time, 19-year-old, super excited to see what he can do. But he's not the only top prospect that's a teenager that's going to be starting out in Fayetteville, and I know that's your selection. So this is a slam dunk too.
Yep, Kevin Alvarez. This is a tough one because I was, saying all off season of like, take your time with him.
Right.
He's never played in the FCL, but he's going to go straight to Fayetteville here. I know everyone's been pretty excited about it, and he looks the part too. Every photo that we saw of Kevin Alvarez, 6'3", 184 pounds, and I think he's probably even more than 184. Just even if you look at the photos of him from spring breakout, he looks solid. And it was kind of tough because you go back, Jimmy, and you look at the photos of Alvarez from the last couple of years, and they were before he even signed. So he's this kind of scrawny, left-handed hitting outfielder. He looks 16, and now he just looks more physically matured, and I think that's great. He's a 60 grade hit tool. He has that power at 55, way above, or not way above, but above average, and you can probably continue to work on that. And in his first year pro, he hit 301, 874 OPS in 47 games in the DSL. He walked more than he struck out. And, it goes back to those numbers. You're not going to over annualize it, but, scouts really like all the tools that he has, and they can put it all together. And defensively, above average there as well as a 50 grade fielder, 45 grade arm. I think they're going to keep him in right field as much as they can. And then, see where you can go from there. I mean, wouldn't it be a bad thing to have him in left, especially if he's hitting really well as he moves up the system. I just wouldn't I'd still be cautious just numbers wise, unless they're like out of, great numbers and they're just jumping off the page of you, react how you want. But if it's going to be, kind of ups and downs, the ebbs and flows of an 18-year-old in his second pro season, and his first time being stateside, I kind of take your time with him and let him kind of develop in the same way that we've tried to see the other guys develop at Fayetteville at his age.
Yeah, given that he was only 18, I kind of thought he might start the season out in the Florida Complex League, finish there, and then maybe move up to Fayetteville. But him starting out in Fayetteville maybe just gives me faith that the Astros saw something, obviously last year over winter, spring training and stuff, that they felt he was ready for that challenge. And I can't think of a time, I'd have to go back and look, but when we had, arguably probably on everyone's list, maybe the top two prospects, they're probably going to be hitting, I don't know, second and third and fourth, unless they're trying to split up the lefties or whatever. But that's going to be a super fun duo to watch there. Really, that's the future of the Astro system, what you're seeing down in Fayetteville and even Asheville. So before we get to the rest of the roster, we'll jump over to the pitching side. And the one I have listed that I think is very intriguing, Jagger Beck. The Astros signed him as an undrafted free agent out of high school, which is pretty unique, but he's built really well, 6'6", 205 pounds, what they got him listed as. Signed after 2024, made his debut last year, had some okay numbers, ended up had an injury. I don't remember exactly what it was. Nothing that was like, hugely concerning last year. But ended up, I think he was hitting 95 with the fastball, hitting some new high on velocities. He ends up going and playing in Australia at 18 years old, and ended up coming away with a 3.16 ERA over 37 innings, 9 starts. I don't know what the competition's like in Australia in the Winter League, but to be 19 years old, going over there and playing and pitching like that, performing well, I think was really cool to see. And like I said, it's a guy that was signed as an undrafted free agent out of high school, teenager, going to be in Fayetteville after having some really good numbers. So super excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, there was kind of I wouldn't say a weird run, but there was a very quiet run on high school arms that were getting signed post draft, and it was one that was like Jagerbeck, who was like, I think we'll take our time, see how that works out, and maybe we'll see him in Fayetteville in a year or two. And I think it's great that he's going to be healthy coming into this. And I wouldn't slight any competition down there in Australia. The Astros have sent guys there for a reason. They've seen success with Anthony Hueso, you're going to talk about in a second, and Neomar Ochoa before his major injury as well. He had some success down there. So there's a good, there's a reason the Astros are, agreeing to send guys down under, and it's working out. A pitcher that I kept hearing about a lot this offseason, just kept getting brought up when I would talk with scouts, Jimmy, was Gable Pentecost, 6th round pick, coming over from an NAIA school, so kind of the junior college level from Taylor, which is in Indiana. He's the first pick for the Trojans in over a decade, but it just was a name that just kept popping up, and he didn't even pitch last year because of a shoulder impingement. It delayed his professional debut to now. His strikeout to walk ratio, 5.4. He had 116 strikeouts last year, and that was 6th in the nation in the NAIA level. So overall, I mean, those numbers are great, and I think you're very excited about what that kind of translates to, because he is 22 years old. He'll be 23 this summer. He's a little bit on the higher end of guys, but 50 grade fastball, 50 grade curveball, 50 grade changeup, and the best pitch is that slider for him. I think he's going to be a guy that could move up the system pretty quickly and maybe finish the year at AA if everything goes well for that shoulder.
Yeah, and if the Astros continue doing what they're doing, they're finding these arms out of nowhere, and maybe he's another one on that list. And there's a few other draftees from last year that are going to be joining him. Kellen Oaks, Nick Potter, who I know is a lot of people are excited about just based on the fastball. I think he's throwing it up to 99, 100, like something like that. I'm assuming both those guys will be relieving, but there's some other intriguing names there. I think once again, there's some young international arms. Javier Perez was the FCL pitcher of the year last year. Had some really good numbers, decent numbers in Fayetteville when he got that promotion. Very good command. Jesus Carrera, same thing. Not like the most electric stuff, but just really knows how to pitch and controls this stuff. So Leomar Rosario, I didn't realize that he had it in him, but we saw him in the spring breakout, and I think he topped out on 100.2. I think he's been up to like 101. So just insane fastball. He's got some command issues that he's going to have to work through. Kind of reminds me of a Mercedes from a few years ago, but some definitely intriguing arms there that are recent draftees, but also on the younger side, and that could be the future of the system.
I agree. And when you move down, when you're talking about some of those international guys, there's still names that are going to pop out to you and just pop out to other people that are looking through this roster. On the position player side, of course, you have Camilo Diaz, who's been looked at as one of those top international signings for the Astros in recent years. Kenny Gomez, who I guess this is technically a demotion. He's starting the year in Fayetteville and not in Asheville. Another one, Herman Ramirez, who signed for a lot of money as well. I think in that $1 million to $2 million bracket, kind of in that same sense of Kevin Alvarez. He hasn't really broken through offensively. So there's a lot of guys in here. Hector Salas, Juan Sierra. These are names that we've heard about for a while. I think it's Juan Sierra that I remember when he signed, there were some scouts that said he had a very similar swing to Aaron Judge, and that always kind of stuck with me. And if you watch him, you can kind of see it as well with that short leg kick and kind of quick bat speed. And that always kind of stuck with me when I would watch him hit.
Yeah, he had some good numbers last year in the FCL as a teenager. I think he's like 6'2", 205, really good build. So yeah, that's another one I'm really looking forward to. I mentioned Anthony Hueso, which was kind of my selection if I didn't take the layup. Had a breakout year last year, drafted a couple years ago out of in the 12th round, got an over slot bonus, if you want to call it that. Had some really good numbers last year. Started out in the rookie league, only hit 231, but had 6 homers. 12 stolen bases, OPS over 850, moves up to Fayetteville and finishes the season really strong, a 301 average, 2 homers, 6 stolen bases. Then he ended up getting hurt maybe in the last week or two. But we talked about going down to Australia. Hueso went down there as well, hit 340, which once again I think is extremely impressive for a teenager to go there and do that. 6 homers, 22 RBIs. I think what really stood out to me was the 17 walks to 21 strikeouts. Last year, his walk to strikeout ratio wasn't great, wasn't terrible, but it wasn't something that you would necessarily, really bring up. But 17 walks to 21 strikeouts as a teenager, go into Australia and play baseball. I think that's huge. Starting the season back out in Fayetteville, really excited for what he's going to do. So that's another left-hander you're at in there with Alvarez and Nance.
And I think this will finally be that year where he can just be a traditional prospect. We
Yep.
saw it the last couple of years where it was kind of mix and match. At the end of 2024, he finished the year in Asheville, kind of coming up and being one of those outfielders to fill a role. Last year, at certain parts, he went up to Sugarland. I think at one point in the 2024 season, he played, I think, one game. He had one day in Corpus Christi. He was the youngest player in the Texas League at the time.
Yep.
So this is one of those opportunities where he just gets to be a traditional prospect and move up the system and not have to worry about the injuries from the past. I had a scout told me the kid's just going to be a monster. And this was back in 2024. This was before, when I think even myself, I was kind of writing him off as, maybe you're just going to be a guy that kind of fills in at times. He's just going to be that stopgap player in the system. I've always liked his swing. I think it's just long and long in a good way. He gets the ball really fast, but it's just such a strong bat. And I'm kind of excited how that looks. And I wouldn't write him off as a defender either. Even going back, if you look at the videos, and Jimmy, you might have reposted them because I remember you posting or quote tweeting him. Defensively, he was really good in Australia as well. And I think he has good range, and you can keep him in right field as long as you can. I think the arm will play.
Yeah, and that you brought up something else I wanted to hit on as well. The Baseball America had did some or made a hit plus stat that they have, and he ranked really well on there. So he was posting a 90th percentile max exit velocity at 107 miles per hour. He had a 27% barrel rate, and which was the highest of all 19-year-olds listed in the hit plus. So really good hit plus number. Yeah, numbers were great in Fayetteville last year. So like I said, that just I think as you could see as we went down the levels, Hashville into Fayetteville, a lot of really good young talent. We've talked about it for years. I think Dana Brown is maybe put an emphasis on some of the younger players. We saw it last year in the draft. I think he drafted 5 or 6 high schoolers, signed all but one of them, and then signed 2 that were undrafted high schoolers as free agents. And then you go to Beck and you look at some of the guys from the previous year. Ethan Wagner, not on a team just yet, but maybe he'll be there eventually. But man, Kenny, I'm super pumped for the year. I think it's going to be a good season. I'm already ready to get over to Asheville in Fayetteville in June. But anything else you want to add on the system?
No, I don't think so. I'm excited. I keep just looking towards the future because I want to see how much that Sugarland lineup will change as well. And that's not, cutting any guys short from that side of, there are some older guys there that will probably make an impact for the Astros. But I'm also just intrigued to see how many of these guys will be pushed. I think Ethan Fry will be the one that we'll have our eyes on a lot as someone that can move up the system pretty fast. That rotation in Corpus Christi is a lot of fun. I think there's just like these little wrinkles on all 4 rosters that a lot of people will be excited about if they can get out to games this summer.
Yep. And you asked me about the players that, we've interviewed or had on the podcast interviewed, and looking at it, Cole, Leach, Price, Sullivan, Hicks, Spence, Mayer, going down, Beck, few others, Huezo. So yeah, there's a long list. So I'm super pumped for this season. And like you said, I think it's going to be a good season for the minor league system. And we'll get to it when it gets closer. But this draft is going to be crucial. We know we got a lot of picks, 2 first-round picks. So super pumped for the system, super ready to get Asheville and Fayetteville going this week. All right, well, that's all I got. Appreciate y'all checking out the Astros Future podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, we thank you for listening to the Astros Future podcast, covering your Astros and the minor league system.